happen. My name's Jonathan Rothschild, sometimes known as the Mayor of Tucson, and we are here today to discuss, can the private sector dollars alleviate poverty? And I'm very happy to have with us two folks who know a little bit about this. The first is the co-founder and director of programs for the Robin Hood Foundation. He has a PhD in economics from MIT. He was the director of the Greenberg Center for Geoeconomic Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. Probably the reason I wanted to be a moderator here today was recently at a summit of 18 economists on the subject of how the private sector can help address the issue of poverty. The Nobel Prize winning economist James Heckman introduced himself on the panel as indicating the reason he was here was to listen to Michael Weinstein. He knows more about this than all of us. Author of Rules for Giving, Michael Weinstein.
Thank you.
Our other panelist is President of Palisades Media Ventures, former Chief Executive Officer of the National Public Radio, a former litigator with Wilmer and Hale in Washington, D.C. I think it had a different name then. He served as Deputy General Counsel for the Clinton-Gore 1996 campaign. He has been the Senior Advisor to the Director of the International Broadcasting Bureau, and in his 8.5-year tenure at NPR was known to have strengthened its business management and operations and financial stability, in part from the receipt of a $200 million gift from McDonald's heir Joan Kroc. He is the recent author of With Charity for All, Why Charities Are Failing and a Better Way to Give, Ken Stern.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, let me get this started by indicating to you that Tucson, about a year and a half ago, was in a study considered the sixth poorest metropolitan area in the United States. Not city, you have to get that clear with people, but metropolitan area. We're now eighth. I like to take credit for that, but I'm not sure that a couple other cities haven't gone below us. But the good thing about it is the community has now begun to focus on how to best address the issue of poverty systematically. We live in a time when we know that government either cannot or will not do it all. DC, in my experience, which has only been a couple of years, is, I would say, parsimonious at best. And as you know, you are here in the state of Arizona. So what happens is this issue of poverty falls to the localities, the cities, the counties to deal with. And as I'm sure you know, the cities around the country are just doing their best to try to continue maintaining their present services. So I think with the recognition from all that the private sector must help, yet both of you, I know in your books, have expressed concerns about how the best way is to make this happen. Gentlemen, we are here to listen and learn. Michael?
I'm an economist, and don't hold me too much against me to start off with. But one of the things economists preach, and I think preach correctly, is that issues of poverty, any issue of redistribution, is best handled at the highest level of government, not the locality. So that a town is going to be in rough shape if it tries to redistribute income from the wealthier members of that community to less wealthy members. A state's going to have similar problems. People will leave the state if its tax structures and if its government policies favor people above the median income or tax people above the median income to favor people below it. So these kinds of things should be happening at the national level. People are much less likely to leave the United States for minor tax reasons than they are to leave a particular city or whatever. So having said that, and mindful of the constraints that you're thinking about, I think I'll be satisfied today if I convince you to adopt one conversation and drop another. The conversation I'd urge you to drop is the conversation that says we're going to eliminate poverty, we're going to find a game changer, we're going to radically alter the circumstances of low income residents of Arizona, or let alone of Tucson. All these large global promises, big heaves, et cetera, and assume a different language and a different notion, which is a rate of return, a kind of corporate business, normal corporate rate of return. If the private sector is going to do something, it's going to be because it marshals dollars and spends them in a way that does the maximal good. If they're a philanthropic nonprofit and they're in the business of fighting poverty, you want them to spend their dollars that have the biggest impact in raising the living standards of the poor citizens they're trying to help. That doesn't mean they have to be the biggest game in town. They don't have to have a replicable project. They don't have to have a silver bullet. They don't have to be a game changer. But what they have to do is spend their dollars smartly. And then I'll say a few more words and I'll stop. What we've done at Robin Hood is an organization that gives away about $150 million a year fighting poverty in New York City. To put that in context, the Rockefeller Foundation will give away about 2 to 2.5 times that next year, but they operate around the world. We operate in one city. It's a very different model of having an effect. And the way we set ourselves up is we promise our donors, many of whom are on our board, but we promise our donors that we have put in sophisticated systems of accountability. Read that as a relentless application of benefit cost analysis, as any economic student learns as an undergraduate. Putting in that sophisticated system, we take account of how these dollars are used, no matter in what way we use them. So that whether we're putting dollars into a micro-lending program, into a charter school, into a pre-kindergarten program, into an after-school program, emergency food, whatever we're doing, we measure the effect of that grant on the low-income residents of New York City, and we spend our money accordingly. So bringing these conversations together, I leave you with the following thought. We spend $150 million a year. If you look at our website and the materials we put out, I'd like to believe we can convince you that for every dollar we spend, on average, we raise the living standards of poor New Yorkers by somewhere between $10 and $12. That's what we can do. That's what private sector can do. We can spend money and put people in a better situation than they were without us. That brings these two conversations together. We leave it for public policy. We leave it for the political entity to adopt the kinds of policies that can have more trenchant, if you will, more sweeping, more economy-wide, more city-wide impacts. That's not what a private charity can do, and that's not, in our case, what we attempt to do. So let me leave it there.
Ken?
Thank you. First, let me just say it's a great pleasure to be here. I'll start off, I want to tell you a couple stories, but actually I'll start off with a story from this morning. I was on the phone with my wife back in Washington, and she asked what I was going to do today. I said I was going to be on a panel about whether private dollars can alleviate poverty. I said to her, because she thinks about these issues, well, what do you think I should say? She paused for a second. She said, you should say, they haven't yet, bang the microphone down and walk out. I'm tempted to do that because it's actually, I think, a fairly good formulation of the situation we face. I think the challenge we face is the scale of the problem. I mean, I think Mike was essentially alluding to it. The problem of poverty is not a problem just of income. It's not just a problem of education. It's not just a problem of health. It's not just a problem of transportation. It's not just a problem of job training. It's not just a problem of housing. It's all of the above. Those are scale problems that often require scale solutions. And as I frequently write about charity, and people often come to me and say, private solutions, private giving is a better solution than government programs. I think that's reflected a lot because of people's disillusionment with government, often with good reason. But the scale, the challenges of poverty in this country are enormous. Just think about the problem of education. Public spending on just K-12 spending in this country each year is about $1.3 trillion. All charitable giving in this country, for whatever cause, is only about $250 billion. If the Gates Foundation, the nation's largest foundation by a good bit, decided tomorrow, and it won't do this, to empty out its entire coffers and put it all into education in one